Before leaving, please remember to make a contribution to all of my thousands of hours of work here, PayPal, Patreon, or fundraiser in the description below or on the China Rising Radio Sinoland article page. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio Sinoland on the beaches of Normandy. And today I don't have to go very far. I just go about a 3 or 4 hour drive to the east into Flanders and to have on the show today Frans Vandenbosch. How are you doing, sir?
I'm fine. How about you? I'm very fine here. It's beautiful weather here, a little bit cold, but yeah, I'm doing well.
For the fans out there, Frans and I actually know each other quite well. In fact, he and his wife were nice enough to come visit Florence and me last year, about September of last year, and we spent a couple of days together. And we've known each other now for through emails and phone calls for at least 2 or 3, I think maybe a couple, 3 years. So I'm really happy to have you on the show, Frans. Welcome.
Thank you, Jeff.
Let me read Frans's amazing bio because it really is impressive. Frans Vandenbosch, Chinese name Fang Tengbo, is a Fleming who lived in China for years. Previously, he has crossed all of China and visited more than 50 large and small towns and cities throughout the country. During his professional activities in China, he supported companies in the automotive, medical, electronics, and plastics processing sectors. He spent some time as a guest teacher at Qingdao University, was keynote speaker at conferences for Chinese entrepreneurs, and gave interviews for Chinese business magazines. As technology director at TGI, he has led the styling, design, and engineering of new Chinese cars. He is a co-founder of IIGS, a Chinese think tank in Beijing, and an active member of the Confucius Institute at KU Leuven, and which is the first Confucius Institute outside of China. Wow, amazing, Frans.
Thank you.
Well, listen, let's go ahead and get right into, by the way, we're talking today about his book, which I've read, and it's really outstanding. I really hope everybody gets a copy. There he goes, Frans. Frans has, mine's an ebook. I read the ebook, so I can't show it on my phone screen, but I did read it, and it's just a wonderful, colorful, well produced book. It's called Statecraft and Society in China and Chinese grassroots politics, and so he really gets into it. And it's available on Amazon, and he has a list of places where it's available longer than even John Rachel in the China Writers Group. He's going to be jealous when he sees your list. All of the big stores in Europe, it's available. It's available all over the world, so you will not have a hard time finding it either in print or electronically. So, Frans, just tell us briefly how we met, because I didn't remember, and then you mentioned it, and I go, yeah, you're right. It's Godfrey Roberts. Tell us how we met.
Well, that's some time ago. I think in 2019. I was in contact with Godfrey Roberts, and I asked him several questions about living in China or in Thailand first, initially about Thailand, because it was so difficult to get a residence permit.
Yeah, still is.
Then Godfrey referred me to you, because you obviously also have lived in China and so on, and you explained me some tricks how to organize that. That's how we got in contact. And then CVG, of course, the discussion group and the emailing group. We were extensively in contact, which
The China Writers Group. It's a group of about 25 of us that sort of like an information board, a sounding board. We exchange information, comments, et cetera. It's really, really, really useful. And Frans has always been a huge contributor to it. So yeah, and then you came to Normandy, and now I got to come visit you and go see that Chinese Labor Corps memorial
Yeah, very well. I will guide you around there.
I would love it.
Interesting.
Well, listen, let's get to the first question about your book. Please tell us about how you started working with the Chinese over the years. You offer a unique perspective to write a book about China, since you have been working at the industrial level in manufacturing, which is really, really unique for someone to take the time to write such a great book about China and living and working there. Go ahead.
Well, I'm actually a plastics engineer by education. And right from the beginning of my career, I started traveling extensively, business travel, to many places all over the world. That was quite useful because it opened my mind on the world, to get a broader view about what's happening at this globe. Then I and my wife, we spent our holidays gradually more and more in Asia, until maybe 2000 or so, exclusively only in Asia. We went to various countries in Asia. We made an exploration tour in Myanmar when Myanmar was closed, and so on. We made very interesting travels all over the place, China, of course. And then we were helping Chinese students at the Catholic University in Leuven, to feel them a little bit more comfortable. At that time, student exchange with China was not so very well organized. Actually, they just dropped the Chinese students at the airport, and from then on, they were on their own.
Wow.
So I felt that was a little bit difficult for these very young people. And we were helping them a little bit to feel more comfortable here in Leuven. There are about 3,500 currently, 3,500 Chinese students at KU Leuven. Wow. They are the largest foreign community in Leuven.
Wow.
When you walk around in the city here, the ancient city, which is famous for the university, of course, you see quite a lot of Chinese people here around. And we were helping them. And gradually, the parents came visiting us. And we were visiting the parents in China. And that learned me a lot about China. So that's how I got involved in China. I learned to know the culture and the way, the family relations, all these small things of the Chinese families. And then when I was still working for Magna, I worked 15 years in total for Magna, the big multinational company headquartered in Toronto. When I was still working for them, I have taken a holiday and did a project in Suzhou for a Hong Kong company there. And I was trying to convince Magna to do some business in China. But I hesitated, didn't want to do that. China, that was the other side of the world. I didn't want to do that. And then I cut the knot. I said, now I will leave Magna, a well-paid job at Magna, to go to China on my own. And
incredible. How old were you when that happened?
Yeah, crazy.
How old were you?
My whole family declared me crazy because to leave such a comfortable job and to go in the unknown in China, yeah, it was maybe a little bit crazy, yeah. When I arrived in China, I first did some freelance work, short projects for Great Wall in Hebei and for Lifang in Chongqing, and always in automotive. I was automotive plastics expert, and then I worked quite some time for TGI. That's where I designed 5 new cars for Huatai, which is a Mongolian car manufacturer. 5 new cars. The entire thing from the small sketches, the styling, the design, engineering, everything. Of course, not just me, my team did that, which is quite satisfying to see how you create 5 new cars and you see them driving on the roads.
Hey, that's one of mine.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Or there we could have done a little bit better, because from you see all the small mistakes, which the customers of course don't see, but yeah, I see. And there we struggled in that area, and that we resolved quite well, and so on and so on. All these small things you can see when you see driving the cars on the road. And then I have managed for 3 years a medical device company in Songjiang, in south of Shanghai. Also plastic medical devices, electronic devices also, mainly focused on devices for people who have difficulties with breathing, with that kind of things. We sold that in Europe, mainly in France and in Ireland. We didn't produce for the Chinese market. And then made a big mistake, actually. So I was 8 years away from Europe and from Magna. In the meantime, Magna had some difficulties in Europe. They were no longer competitive in Western Europe. I mean, in Germany, France, Belgium, UK, in these countries, they had some, I think, 40 or so manufacturing plants. And they called me to ask if I wanted to come back and to bring some order in that big chaos in Western Europe in Magna. I refused, but gradually they convinced me. Yeah, with gradually more and more attractive compensations. They lured me to go back, and then actually I lived in Stuttgart in Germany, did a project in Turkey to bring over the manufacturing of bumper systems and other parts, automotive parts, to Turkey. Then I did a project for Mercedes-Benz, which was quite interesting because it was so technological, challenging, and a lot of patents in that product. Successful. We made a lot of profit from that, and Mercedes was very satisfied, Mercedes-Benz. And after 3 years, I had difficulties to adapt again to Europe, to the European business culture, where the work of engineers and designers was no longer appreciated, where these big multinational companies were more like banks. Everything was extremely well organized, everything with an Excel sheet. Every decision was taking way too long. And from my time in China, everything went much faster, much more efficient. And I wanted to go back to China. I was offered a job to build a new plant in Wuxi. And so I moved to Suzhou and built that new plant to make controllers for looms. That's the machinery, electronic machinery, to direct every wire of the textile, how to bring the beautiful designed pattern in it, textile. That's the controller of our loom. Set up a manufacturing plant for that in Wuxi. Lived in Suzhou, every day back and forth between Suzhou and Wuxi, which is not so far, some 30 kilometers or so. And then I retired. Then I came back to here, to Flanders, and I first wrote down this book in Dutch.
Yeah, you gave me a copy of that. I can't read it because my Dutch is zero, but I have a signed copy right over here.
You know it. Yeah. That's about general things about China, how to do business in China, things like that in Dutch. But I wanted to go deeper and further, and then I wrote this book, which is recently published, about politics, because I'm so deeply interested in politics. You know, both my grandparents, my grandfathers were in politics, and they knew all the tricks of the politics, also the dirty tricks. My grandfathers. My father, which he was a teacher, he was much more straightforward. He disliked all these marketing tricks and things like that, the lying, and so he taught me never to lie to people, to be straightforward and things like that. He didn't like what his father and his father-in-law did in politics. But actually, the meetings, political meetings, were actually prepared at my home at the kitchen table. I, as a little boy, 8 to 12 years old, I could see them, how they prepared that, and I understand all these small things about politics and also the dirty tricks. So I learned a lot from that. And at the same time, my father told me, don't do that in such a way. That's dishonest. And there I got my interest in politics. I quite well understood all these tricks which we see currently in national politics, geopolitics, and things like that.
Amazing. Listen, you have regaled us with some fascinating anecdotal stories since you were talking about doing business in China versus in the West. Anecdotal stories about the West doing business with China Inc., China Incorporated. Tell us about, sum up, the challenges that Western business people and Chinese business people have trying to work together.
Well, first, I returned to Germany, and the manufacturing plant, that's a side note, manufacturing plant was in France. And I often told my friends I had much more difficult to combine these two cultures, the French and the German culture, to combine that, to make them work together. Much more difficulties to do that than to adapt to the Chinese culture when I moved to China. I right away from I arrived in China, and I already could speak some Chinese before I arrived in China. I went to university courses to learn Chinese. So my integration in China went quite easy. I understood the Chinese business culture right away, which is exceptional for a foreigner, certainly in business, arriving in China.
Yeah.
I have seen businesses arriving in China, coming and going, and coming back, trying again, and going again, and make a new investment, which was lost because of terrible mistakes, big mistakes. I have seen the fighting in joint ventures, especially between the Chinese partner and the Western partner, and all these personal fights between the disagreements between people. I have also seen how well the Germans are doing in China.
Yeah.
Which is remarkable. 45% of the cars in China are German cars.
Yeah, Audi, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz,
BMW.
BMW. Is Opel there? I don't know. Is Opel
No,
there?
Opel is not there.
Opel,
And
yeah.
that will kill Opel because they're not there. They were part of General Motors, and General Motors in China is going down terribly. So it's almost over for General Motors in China. So I had not too big difficulties to adapt to China. The Germans also have a certain advantage in doing business in China. But the Americans, oh my dear, it's especially from American people who came to China to do some business there. It's from them that I have seen the big disasters. Yes, really terrible. And when I had a conversation with these people, and they asked me what's wrong, what I'm doing wrong, why my business is not thriving, then I sometimes told them, try to behave as a German, which they didn't appreciate, of course. And they didn't understand that. So let me explain what are the particular issues that Americans have when doing business in China. The lack of cultural flexibility. Americans are struggling with that. To adapt to the completely different business culture. Yeah. Doing business in China, it's actually not so very difficult. It's actually it's easier to do business in China than in the West. But you have to know how to do that. And the Americans apparently are unable, or they don't have the flexibility to adapt to that, to change that. They think with our headquarters in the United States, we already have a manufacturing plant in India, in Brazil, in Russia, in South Africa, and so on. And now we can copy paste that project to China, which isn't true at all, because that will certainly not work. There is one business culture in this world which is completely different from all the others. That is the Chinese business culture. But they have difficulties to grab that, to understand that. That's a problem. Overconfidence is another problem. Many people, they go to China and they are so confident that it will work, that they don't listen to other people. They don't want to pay a consultant, of course, but they also don't listen to other people doing business in China. They don't want that. They know it, and it's their truth, and that's the way they want to do it. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, another particular problem that the English-speaking people, particularly the Americans, have is that's the lingua franca of the world, of course. English, everybody can speak English. Also Chinese people can speak some English, and they don't feel the need to learn Chinese. They speak Chinese in their management team, and they are sitting around the table with their financial manager, production manager, human resource manager, and they speak Chinese, but the business owner or the CEO speaking Chinese to these people doesn't understand what's really going on in his manufacturing plant. He doesn't know. He can go around in his factory and trying to talk to the foreman or to the operators, but he cannot communicate. He doesn't know what's really going on. That is a problem. If you don't speak Chinese, forget it. Then there's another particular issue that the Americans are facing. The Germans have their Vergangenheitsbewältigung. That is the feeling of guilt because what they did in World War II. The Americans, of course, don't have that. Of course. But the Germans, they feel much more humble because of that. That feeling of guilt still today is deep in even in young Germans. Yeah. And when they go to China, they remember that, they know that, they can adapt to Chinese culture much more easier. Then another thing is the American exceptionalism that is hindering them terribly when trying to do business in China. There was a young American entrepreneur in Shanghai recently, I think a year or 2 years ago, who said, yes, I'm successful now in China, but the biggest difficulty I faced when I moved to China and to adapt to the culture here was my American exceptionalism.
Yeah.
But now, thanks to my Chinese girlfriend, I'm rid of it, and now I'm healed. Now my business is thriving.
Yeah, yeah.
They of course they don't realize that. It's so deep in their brain that they don't realize that exceptionalism. So that is hindering the Americans from doing business in China.
Amazing. Well, I think a lot of people who want to do business in China will be listening to this interview. Your book is a wonderful compendium of, quote, all about China, including aspects of society, infrastructure, governance, politics, business, and culture. As a successful engineer / businessman, what inspires you to devote so much time and effort to realize your book?
The truth. I'm hunting for the truth. I cannot stand lies. I hate it when media or other people are lying to each other. I simply can't stand it. I learned that from my father, of course, to be so straightforward, and it's touched me deeply when I see the media lying every day to the people. I can't stand it. My only purpose is to debunk all these lies. And some people say then, oh, you are doing that to defend China. Yes, but that's collateral. Yeah, that's right. I'm debunking lies. I'm not doing that for China, not direct. That's not my first purpose. I'm not defending China. By debunking lies, yes, of course, I may be helping China, but its first thing is lies. And another thing you told me, yes, indeed, my book, there are so many subjects, and only at the second half or so, I'm going deeper into the grassroots, the low-level politics in China. How local communities are doing politics in China. But I was feeling I first have to explain people some general things about politics in China. So that's why the first half of my book is about national politics, geopolitics, and about democracy and things like that in China. To explain them that first, because they need to know that before they can understand the local politics.
Yeah. Well, and now, and I coined the neologism, big lie propaganda machine, the BLPM, and I mean, and I talk about behind the Great Western Firewall. I mean, I don't think Westerners realize what an incredible, they just live in a bubble.
Yeah.
And it's sad. And friends, family, loved ones, people who I care about, and they're just, it's Fox, CNN, BBC, The Guardian, newspapers, Le Monde, and here in France, French television's a little bit better than American television, but it's just, I'm sorry, they're brainwashed. They are absolutely brainwashed, and especially about China and the enemies, the perceived enemies of the West, Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, Venezuela. It's just Cuba. Basically they're all the socialist communist countries, with some anti-imperialist ones like Russia. And so you're right. And I'm called a panda hugger. I'm called a panda hugger because I say nice things about China. Well, just like you and I together probably lived 25 years collectively in China, and we traveled all over the country. We see how it works. We know how it works. And it's not what you read in the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times. I mean, it's just it's another world.
Yeah, I can add an anecdote to that. When I was living in China, I came back to Flanders to meet my family about every 4, 5, 6 months. And then my mother was organizing a big party with my brothers and my sister. And then, of course, they asked me, how is it in China? And they feel some pity for me because I was living in such a backward country. And then I explained them how I was living there, what I was doing there, and that I enjoyed my life in China. They simply didn't believe me.
Yeah.
So I was showing them facts and photos and things from China. I couldn't convince them. And if I a little bit convinced them, the week after when I was back to China, they were, yeah, they got it again from the media. So we don't have that power of the mainstream media.
Yeah.
We can tell them whatever we want. The week after, they are brainwashed again.
It reminds me of when we moved back to China in 2010, and our younger daughter Kiara went with us because she was still in 8th grade. Our older daughter stayed in the States to go to university, and we went back to France for a summer vacation, and we were sitting there on Champs-Élysées. I mean, an iconic landmark around the world, les Champs-Élysées, with the cafes and the restaurants and the theaters and the stores and the trees, the magnificent trees and L'Arc de Triomphe, Place de la Concorde down below, and my daughter and I were sitting there at this very nice, very ritzy cafe, drinking a €5 cup of coffee. And we were sitting there talking. And after about an hour, she goes, "Daddy," she said, "it's really strange. I've been back in France now for about 3 weeks, and I actually feel more free in China than I do here." And I'm just like, wow, to me, this was like a 16-year-old girl, young woman. And for her to say that, in this situation where she had been living in China, now had been living in China for several years, going to school there, and for her to sit there and say that in that setting, to me, was very, very telling. You cannot fathom what it is like to live in China unless you just go there and open your eyes and see it. So, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, your book is so beautiful. It's got these really wonderful visuals. There's most of the pictures are of buildings in China with a focus on libraries, museums. There's even a couple of churches and other culturally related architecture. It's peppered with quotations from the past and the present by famous and not so famous people from all different walks of life and all different cultures across the world. What was your inspiration to do this? It's really highly original and effective.
Really. I have a couple of friends. By the way, when I was living in Shanghai, we had a business club there from Flemings doing business in China. And we met every month, every third Friday of the month, to have our beer together. And that was not just for the beer, of course, but we exchanged business ideas. And at least 3 or 5 of these people wrote books about China.
Wow.
I will show you a couple. Sven Achten is famous. All these books are in Dutch, of course. He is also deeply involved in China, living in China for maybe 20 years or so. Then there's Pascal Coppens, who wrote this book. Pascal Coppens is the guy speaking perfectly Chinese. And when I arrived in Shanghai in 2006, he guided me around a little bit. He helped me somewhat. And now, I think 2 years ago, he wrote this book. And it is from this book that I got the idea to add a photo just before the title of each chapter. He also did that in his book, this one. And the idea is from his book. So I also did that.
That's really cool the way you did it.
Before each chapter. This one, for example.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I loved it.
Yeah, it's I'm quite satisfied with that.
And I agree with you that the Chinese people have real, I mean, in big letters, participatory democracy. I've seen it, and you've seen it, and we both lived it. Please tell us, share your experiences. This gets into the second half of your book about the real democracy in China.
Well, I often say, at least last time, and yesterday evening I also said that there is more democracy, real democracy in China than in all Western European countries combined.
Yeah.
The real democracy in China, you can feel that, you can see that, but it's also visible in the figures. 90% of the Chinese people are satisfied with their government, with the Chinese Communist Party. They are satisfied. While here, you can talk to whoever you want here. They are complaining. They are unhappy with what is happening in Brussels. Everybody complaining here. I am so... Here in Western Europe, people are unhappy. Yesterday, I was in a traffic jam, and I could see the people coming from the other side, and when you look at their face, you can see that they are stressed, they are frustrated, unhappy, people in their cars. I was watching their face. What are they doing? Are they happy, unhappy? They're all frustrated here. They are, and also when you talk to people, you can feel that they are frustrated, especially about politics and democracy here. There is no democracy in whatever Western country. There is no democracy. You know, democracy, which is quite remarkable, I feel. Democracy is a Greek word meaning the power to the people. In all English dictionaries, they define democracy by using elections. As per English dictionaries, American or British dictionaries, there is no democracy without elections. While, in my view, these are two completely distinct things. There you can have a perfect democracy without elections. And therefore, when you check that word, that same word democracy, in French, German, Spanish, or other language dictionaries, the definition of democracy, they do that without using the word elections. Meaning you don't need elections to have perfect democracy. People in China are happy with their government. General elections or not, by the way, there are elections in China.
At the local level, yeah.
Yeah.
Almost a million of them every 3 years.
Yes, but yeah.
A million villages.
Know that, and they also don't know about that there are more parties in China, and that they participate in the power in China, the other parties, and so on. Most people are simply not aware of that. Yes, there's real democracy in China. Yes, and more freedom too. I agree with your daughter. When I will move back to China, it will be for the freedom. If you tell that to anybody here in the West, I will go to China for the freedom. I think you're crazy. Yeah, they simply don't understand that.
Yeah. Next question. Compare China's President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Li Keqiang. We could even go back all the way to Mao and Deng and Jiang and Li Peng and Hu, and we could go back to all the leaders since 1949. Anyway, but compare them to the West: Joe Biden, Boris Johnson, Emmanuel Macron, and Angela Merkel, who is now out. But anyway, tell us about that, the compare and contrast.
Well, about these people, they are dwarfs. They are little boys compared to Chinese politicians. To particularly Xi Jinping, he's morally and intellectually way more superior to these Western dwarfs. Vladimir Putin,
Yeah.
same thing. Smart guy, unbelievable. He morally and ethically on a much higher level than all these Western. Yeah, okay, I will not use that word. In my book, I spent a special chapter about Chinese politicians compared to Western politicians about that particular subject. You know, almost all Chinese politicians are STEM graduates.
Yeah.
They are engineers or mathematicians or scientists,
economists,
that kind of things.
Yeah.
While in the West, there's not one single one that I know. Maybe one in 1,000 or so, but in the West, almost all politicians are sociologists. Now, if
or
you
lawyers,
see,
or lawyers.
lawyers, yes, lawyers are super sociologists.
Yeah.
Now, if you compare the IQ level of sociologists with STEM graduates, there's 15 points, 15 IQ points. And if you differences that, of course, STEM graduates are smarter, 15 points smarter than sociologists. Now add to that Chinese people in general have 10 IQ points more than Westerners. That's making a difference of 25 IQ points.
Yeah.
Difference between Western and Chinese politicians. Can you imagine a meeting between Western politicians and Chinese politicians? For example, in Alaska some time ago, they are sitting at the table, 4 Westerners at this side and 4 Chinese at the other side. On top of that, you should know that all the Chinese, they can speak English, but the Westerners, they don't know Chinese. That's an additional. But these 25 IQ points differences, that's a negotiations between idiots and super smart people. 25 points is something you can feel that when you talk to somebody, 5 or 10 minutes talk to somebody, you can feel them that somebody is not so smart or very smart. It's amazing the IQ level difference between Western and Chinese politicians. On top of that, of course, Chinese politicians have much more higher ethical, moral values than Western politicians. Here in the West, politicians, they are focused on the next election, on the next 3 or 5 years, on their elections, whether they will be have enough votes and things like that.
Contributions, money.
They don't think about our children, the future of our children, while Chinese politicians also are thinking on much longer term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
gets back to to the surprise of many outsiders, Christianity is doing very well in China. Tell us about that.
It is not just Christianity which is flourishing in China, but almost all Western religions, and also Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, they are flourishing. But particularly Christianity is doing quite well. The past 15 years, there are now almost as much Christians in China as there are members of the
Communist Party of China.
I don't add too much value on that, and the figure is probably not so exact, but still almost as much Christians, registered Christians, going to church every weekend than members of the Communist Party. And I feel, although it is legally not allowed to be a Christian when you're a member of the Communist Party, I still have the impression that the Communist Party is helping and pushing Christianity in China. That may come as a surprise, because here in the West, most people are thinking there's a problem with Christianity in China. That is not the case. The Christianity is doing very well in China, and they are respected people in China, the Christians. There, of course, is a problem with Christianity in China. That is, there are so many divisions and different groups. There are two big things. That is the official registered Christians, registered at the Sara, the official state Christians, and the others which are unregistered, the former house churches, or even a long time ago underground churches. These people, the unregistered ex-underground churches, I feel they are somewhat frustrated. They are unhappy because the official Christians are very successful. There's another reason why they are so successful. And because the official Christians are so successful, the underground, ex-underground, because today they are no longer underground, they feel unhappy. I also have the impression that the official Chinese registered Christians are much more pure, adhering to the real solidarity, the real principles of the first Christians 2000 years ago. It is a complicated situation, and they are gradually growing together, but it will take time. I have seen when Pope Franciscus came to power some years ago, I feel that it was a color revolution, that he was placed there by the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, that the takeover by Pope Franciscus from Benedict, from Joseph Ratzinger, that it was a political coup. And in China, that didn't went unnoticed. They very well have seen that happening. especially in the Christian church, in the both groups of the Christian church in China. And at that time, and still today, more and more Christians from the former unregistered Christians, the former underground, are now going over to the official church.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is adding up to that frustration of that former underground, unregistered churches.
Yeah, unregistered. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I just for the fans out there, you said SARA, and SARA stands for State Administration for Religious Affairs. They are an administrative body of the national government to keep an eye on churches and mosques and temples, because the Chinese government knows that unfortunately they can be used by outside forces like the Saudis in Xinjiang, some reactionary anti-communist churches in the United States. We're working with churches in China, especially the Protestant ones, causing, basically they're, counter-revolutionary. They're against the government.
Yes.
And so this happens, and there's even, some Buddha, this happens in some Buddhist temples too, and with the Dalai Lama. And so this, it's just reality that powerful people are going to use religion to overthrow who they perceive as enemies. And the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Republic of China are considered to be huge enemies of the West and global capitalism. So that's why they have that organization.
It's quite simple. Some of these churches, a small minority of these churches, yes, as you say, particularly Protestant churches, but there are also the so-called non-denominational Christians, which they don't report to Beijing, don't report to Rome. They are independent Christians, especially these churches. They simply have a building, they put a cross on it, but actually they are a cover organization for CIA activities. Very simple as that. And we shouldn't be surprised if the Chinese government is removing the crosses from these buildings. They are not churches. I wouldn't dare to send my children, even not in daytime, to such churches. These are not churches. These are simply CIA buildings.
Yeah. Franz's crystal ball. Where will the Chinese people be on their 100th liberation anniversary in 2049? They've got their liberation, communist socialist liberation in 1949. 100 years later, it will be 2049. What do you see in your crystal ball, Frans?
Difficult. I don't dare to do that kind of predictions, but already today, people in China are living a wonderful and exciting time. They have a fantastic future for their children and the next generations. We don't have that here in the West. So already now, Chinese people have all reasons to be happy today in 2021. They can feel that the tables are turning and that the future will be in China. That is a very powerful feeling that is giving them strength for the future. And if you look at the figures, the USA is generating only 14.5% of the global GDP. More than half of the GDP is generated in Asia. All the Asian countries together are producing more than half of the products of the world. And China is almost a quarter of that. And it is increasing. So you can easily predict that it will grow. Already today, an average family in Shanghai can spend double as much money to a car or to holidays than an average American family. The spendable income of an average Shanghainese family is double as much as an average American family. And now we should not expect the Chinese to push the brakes in the coming years. They will go on with that. And even if they have not double, but 3 times, 4 times, 5 times more than we should not ask them, please break. They will go on. And that will happen in the coming 15, 30 years. They will increase their spendable income by an enormous amount. We will get poor and underdeveloped here in the West, while China will growing enormously. That, of course, will cause big changes in our society, not just about money, but also about how we live together and about politics. Unavoidable. It will change our society too. If we feel that we can have only 1/5 of the Chinese people, it will make us change, I hope.
Yeah, it's pretty frightening. I mean, I see. In fact, I just wrote an article. I don't know if you read it, where I just, I said, the U.S., the West, the U.S. and the West are falling apart at the seams, and infrastructure and services and everything is being austericized. Austerity, cutting back on this, cutting back on that. Not repairing this, not repairing that, even letting the Arecibo Observatory, one of the United States' greatest scientific achievements after the World War II, they let the Arecibo Observatory radio antenna in Puerto Rico collapse, and they knew for 3 years that it was going to collapse, and they didn't do anything. They just let it collapse. And and as I said in my article, I said, well, it's okay. China has developed the FAST, the FAST, the 500-meter dish telescope in Guizhou. So they don't get, China is just racing past the West. It's just unbelievable. In fact, just 2 days ago, maybe you saw it, the French genius that nationalized and became an American and was working for Google, and he said AI, artificial intelligence, it's over. The Chinese have just walked away with artificial intelligence, with big data, with cyber coins and money, and in the electronic yuan, and infrastructure and space, space exploration.
Yeah. He was fired.
It's just unbelievable. Yeah, he was fired. Yeah, well,
you can't say that in the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really encourage everybody to read Franz's book, Statecraft and Society in China. And even if you have already read my books, his is a wonderful complement to mine because they are different. They take different approaches, and Frans is coming from an industrial manufacturing background, and I was coming more from an experiential, sorry, Frans, sociological. Although I did get a degree in animal sciences, and which is science, but and I'm a certified science teacher. But anyway, we came from different, we approached China from somewhat different directions. He was in manufacturing and industry. I was in agriculture, and so definitely get his book. It's available all over the world. And I will give a couple of several of the links that he gave me. Last question from after this wonderful conversation, Frans. Do you have other writing projects in the pipeline, and are you still working with the Chinese?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, of course. I'm actually virtually living in China. I'm physically here, but every day I have so many contacts in China. But I have no plan to write a new book. I wrote this book last year. It was published beginning of this year. And I'm learning so fast from so many people in China that already now I feel I should approach certain subjects differently in my book. Things which I wrote, which I would write today in a different way. So I intend to rewrite it and to make a 2022 edition.
Like a third edition, okay.
With some modifications on it.
All right.
That's what I intend to do. I'm also writing short articles about China. I'm collecting in an article all the scolding, the ad hominem I got, the cursing which I got over me on the Western social media. People don't like me to tell the truth or to say something positive about China, and then they easily start scolding me, cursing me. And I'm collecting that in a nice article. I'm also working on a project for a better understanding of the people who really know China. I want to know or to better understand why these particular people know China so well. Is that because they speak Chinese, because they lived in China, because their partner is Chinese, or whatever? Is there another reason? Is it because they are more susceptible to media influence? I want to get a better understanding. I want to collect some facts and figures about that issue, and that's what I am working on. And of course, I'm still member of IIGS, a founding member, working on a new website, trying to find sponsoring funding to pay to people for IIGS in Beijing. Working on that. I'm active member of Confucius Institute here in Leuven. Doing some work for that too.
Incredible. Well, you're obviously enjoying your retirement, so I'm really happy for you and your wife and your family. So, well, listen, Frans, we're good friends, so we'll probably be in touch on China Writers Group later on today. or maybe the China Rising Radio Sinoland WeChat forum. But anyway, I hope everybody, I will put plenty of links for Frans's book, Statecraft and Society in China, Grassroots Politics. It's really, really good. And I encourage you, and if you don't want to pay for the postage, then get the ebook, which is what I read. And it's beautiful because it's in color on your computer screen, or it's all even in color in print. So anyway, it's a wonderful book. Thank you so much, Frans. And I will be posting this on China Writers Group, this interview, in a couple hours.
Okay. 真好，谢谢你。
All right. Thank you. Good to see your face, and love the conversation today. Thank you very much.
好的，谢谢，再见。
Bye bye. Bye bye.
China Rising Radio Sinoland and China Tech News Flash signing out. Please make a contribution to all of my hard work. Thank you.